welcome. Today we're diving deep into a case that, well, it really exploded online back in the 2010s. You've probably heard of it. We're talking about Elisa Lam. He was a 21-year-old Canadian student, and her disappearance in 2013 from the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. It just became this massive viral sensation, a modern urban legend, really.
Hmm.
We've got a lot to unpack here: police reports, the autopsy, medical records, and of course that incredibly disturbing video footage.
Yeah, and our goal here really is to try and sift through all the folklore that's built up around this. You know, the ghost stories, the conspiracies. We want to focus on the actual evidence, the video, yes, but also the forensic facts, her medical background. Try to understand what the official investigation concluded, and importantly, why so many people still find that conclusion hard to swallow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can't even start talking about Elisa Lam without talking about the Cecil Hotel itself.
Hmm.
I mean, at the time she stayed there, it was called Stay on Main, but it's the same building right there in downtown LA near Skid Row. The location itself just looms over this whole story.
Oh, it really does. The Cecil, its history is just astonishingly dark. Decades of, tragedy, deaths, suicides, overdoses. It's got this grim reputation. And then you add the serial killer connections. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, actually lived there for a while in the 80s
Lived there.
while he was active.
Yeah. And later, Jack Unterweger, that Austrian killer, he stayed there too. It's like this magnet for darkness, you know? So anything happening there, especially something as strange as this, immediately feels more sinister because of that backdrop.
It really sets a stage, doesn't it? Almost too perfectly. But, okay, let's pull back from the hotel for a minute and focus on Elisa herself.
Yeah.
What do we know about her before she arrived in L.A.?
Right. So Elisa Lam was a student at the University of British Columbia, although, interestingly, she wasn't actually registered for classes right at the beginning of 2013. Her parents were immigrants from Hong Kong. She was traveling alone down the West Coast. Seemed like a pretty typical solo trip, you know?
Yeah.
Using Amtrak, buses. She was documenting it online, too, posting photos from the San Diego Zoo, things like that. Just a young woman exploring California. But underneath that, there was this significant struggle going on, wasn't there? Her mental health.
Yes, and this is absolutely crucial to understanding the official narrative. Elisa had been diagnosed with depression and also bipolar I disorder. And bipolar I, we should clarify, that's the more severe form. It involves these extreme manic episodes, which can often include psychosis hallucinations, paranoia, a real break from reality.
Okay, so not just mood swings. This is serious.
Very serious. And she was on a complex regimen of medications to manage it. The reports mention things like Wellbutrin, Lamictal, Seroquel, Effexor.
Wow.
It's quite a list.
Oh, a lot.
It indicates the severity, yeah. You've got antidepressants, mood stabilizers like Lamictal, and critically, an antipsychotic Seroquel or Clozapine that's often used for acute mania, for that paranoia.
And what happens if someone with bipolar I on those kinds of meds stops taking them?
It can trigger a relapse very quickly, especially stopping the antipsychotic. The brain chemistry gets thrown off and you can plunge right back into a manic or psychotic state. Delusions, paranoia, it can come on fast and hard.
And we know this was a risk for her, right? Her family mentioned it.
Yes. The sources confirm she had a history of not consistently taking her medications. Her family apparently kept her illness quite private, and they stated she didn't have suicidal thoughts, but they did acknowledge past instances of medication non-compliance.
And those past instances, they were severe.
Extremely. According to reports, when she'd stopped her meds before, she'd experienced intense hallucinations, terrifying ones. Apparently, she would hide under her bed, convinced something was after her. She'd even been hospitalized at least once due to these episodes. So the pattern was there: stop the medication, and the severe symptoms, the psychosis, could return.
And there's evidence of this struggle escalating right around the time of her trip, isn't there?
Yeah.
That blog post.
Right. In late 2012, she wrote on her blog about a relapse that made her drop classes. She talked about feeling utterly directionless and lost. And she used that quite heavy quote from Chuck Palahniuk: "You're always haunted by the idea you're wasting your life." It suggests a pretty turbulent state of mind leading into 2013.
And that seemed to spill over almost immediately when she checked into the Cecil.
It did. She was first put in a shared room, like a hostel-style setup on the 5th floor. But her roommates complained pretty quickly about, quote, certain odd behavior.
What kind of odd behavior are we talking about?
Well, according to the hotel manager at the time, Amy Price, Elisa was leaving strange notes for her roommates. Things like go home or go away. And she would apparently lock the door to the shared room and then demand a password to let people back in. very paranoid-seeming actions.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely unusual.
So, because of these complaints, after just 2 days, the hotel moved her into a private room on the same floor. And then there's another incident. Just days before she vanished, she attended a live taping of the Conan O'Brien show in Burbank. And she was actually escorted out by security because her behavior was disruptive.
Wow. So multiple signs of escalating issues in those final days.
Exactly. It paints a picture of someone whose mental state was likely deteriorating rapidly as January drew to a close.
Which brings us to January 31st, the day she was last seen, the day she was supposed to check out, and the day that infamous elevator footage was recorded.
Let's set the timeline. She was due to check out on the 31st, planning to head to Santa Cruz next. She'd been calling her parents every single day of her trip. But on January 31st, the call stopped. Her family got worried, flew down to LA, and officially reported her missing on February 8th.
Hotel staff saw her that day, the 31st, but alone. And there was that one interaction at the bookstore.
Right. Katie Orphan, who managed the last bookstore nearby, remembered talking to her. She described Elisa as outgoing, very lively, very friendly, buying gifts for her family, which is interesting, right? It suggests maybe her state was fluctuating, or she could mask it in brief interaction.
The police started their investigation, searched her room. What about the rest of the hotel? It's huge.
That was the problem. They did search her room thoroughly. They brought in police dogs, scent dogs. They even took the dogs up to the roof. But the dogs didn't pick up her scent trail on the roof at that time. And Sergeant Rudy Lopez explained later they couldn't just search every single guest room without probable cause that a crime had occurred. Their hands were tied to some extent.
So she just seemed to vanish within the hotel walls until February 13th.
That's when the LAPD decided to release the security footage. 2.5 minutes from one of the hotel elevators, time-stamped January 31st. And that changed everything. The video went massively viral, millions of views, speculation exploded globally, particularly in Canada and Asia. People were just captivated and disturbed by what they saw.
Okay, let's walk through what that video actually shows, because it's central to everything.
It is. So Elisa enters the elevator alone. She goes to the control panel and seems to press, well, a lot of the buttons, maybe all of them, like he's desperate for the elevator to move now. Then she quickly steps back into the corner, almost like she's hiding from something just outside the door. She peeks out into the hallway, steps back in, then out again.
And the doors, they weren't closing.
No, that's one of the weirdest parts. Despite her clearly having pushed buttons, the doors stay open. They try to close sometimes, then open again. She eventually steps fully out into the hallway, stands near the elevator entrance, and starts making these very strange gestures with her hands, waving them around, moving her fingers in odd ways, almost like she's talking to someone or something that isn't there. Then she walks away, out of the camera's view. And only after she leaves, the elevator doors finally close.
It's incredibly eerie to watch, and the theory started immediately, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 2 main ones popped up right away. First, the pursuit theory. She was running from someone, trying desperately to get the elevator to save her. That explained the button mashing, the hiding. The second, simpler idea was drugs, maybe ecstasy, some kind of party drug causing the erratic behavior.
But then her medical history came out.
Exactly. And that brought the third theory to the forefront, a psychotic episode. Given her bipolar I diagnosis, her history of hallucinations and paranoia when off her meds, this behavior, reacting to unseen things, hiding, the strange gestures, it fits that clinical picture disturbingly well.
But people weren't just analyzing her actions, were they? They were analyzing the video itself, claims of tampering.
Right. Online sleuths got really deep into the technical aspects. They noticed the timestamp on the video was partially obscured. Some claimed the footage seemed slowed down, and there were analyses suggesting almost a full minute of footage might have been cut out from the middle. People saw this not as just, editing for length, but as a deliberate attempt to hide something. Or someone. Maybe someone else was in the hallway with her, just off camera.
And there were other little details, like maybe she just couldn't see the buttons properly.
Yeah, that was a more mundane theory. Maybe she wasn't wearing her glasses and was just trying to find the door close button or the sensor, hence the weird hand movements. Plausible, maybe, but doesn't quite capture the intensity of it.
But what about the door starting to close and then reopening? That seems significant.
Okay, yeah, that's the external push theory, and it's fascinating. Observers pointed out that right after she gets in and hits the buttons, the door starts to close maybe a few inches, then pops back open. Now, usually that happens if the sensor detects something blocking the door, or if someone outside the elevator presses the call button for that floor right at that moment. Since nothing's visibly blocking the door, it strongly suggests someone might have been standing just out of frame in the hallway and hit the call button, stopping her from leaving or maybe interacting with her.
That really complicates the idea that she was just alone and hallucinating.
Yeah.
Implies
Mhm.
someone else.
It certainly adds a layer of ambiguity that the simple psychosis explanation doesn't fully cover. It's one of the details that keeps the foul play possibility alive for many.
So the video goes viral, the search continues, and then things take a really grim turn about 6 days after the video's release.
Yeah, during that week and a half or so while she was still missing, guests at the hotel started complaining. First about really low water pressure, but then some reported the water coming out of the taps was black, dark colored, and had an unusual taste.
Wait, they were drinking this water and showering in it for days.
For days, it's horrifying to think about. The hotel staff was getting these complaints, and finally, on the morning of February 19th, they sent a maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, up to the roof to check the water tanks.
And that's when he found her.
That's when he found her. Inside one of the 4 huge water cisterns on the roof. These tanks fed water to the entire hotel guest rooms, the kitchen, the coffee shop downstairs. He saw the hatch was open on one of the tanks, looked inside, and discovered Elisa Lam's body floating face up in the water.
It's just awful. And getting her out wasn't straightforward either.
No, the opening, the maintenance hatch on top of the tank was too small to remove her body, which was decomposed and bloated by that point. They actually had to drain the entire 1,000-gallon tank, and then they had to physically cut a large section out of the side of the metal tank to retrieve her body.
So gruesome. The autopsy report came out a few months later in June. What did it say officially?
Officially, the LA County coroner ruled the cause of death as accidental drowning, and they listed her bipolar disorder as a significant contributing factor.
What about the condition of the body? Any signs of a struggle?
The report described her body as moderately decomposed, bloated, with greenish discoloration and some skin separation, all consistent with being submerged in water for, almost 3 weeks. She was found naked. Her clothes, similar to what she wore in the elevator video, were found in the water with her, along with her watch and her room key. They were coated in this sand-like particulate, maybe sediment from the tank bottom.
But crucially, no signs of foul play.
That's what the report stated. No evidence of physical trauma, like bruises or cuts, no signs of sexual assault, and nothing to indicate suicide, like hesitation marks or a note. The ruling was firmly accident.
Okay, but wasn't there something controversial in the report? Something about the anal area?
Yes, that detail caused a lot of online speculation. The report noted subcutaneous blood pooling in the anal area. Some people immediately jumped to the conclusion that this proved sexual assault. However, pathologists reading the report pointed out this can also be a result of decomposition. The body bloating, gravity causing blood to pool in lower areas, and the report also mentioned her rectum was prolapsed, which can happen post-mortem in drowning cases due to gas buildup. So while it sounds alarming, the coroner didn't interpret it as evidence of trauma, given the lack of any other injuries.
Right. It's easy for lay people to misinterpret those kinds of details without the full medical context.
Exactly, and the toxicology report reinforced the medical picture.
What did that show? Did they find those party drugs people suspected?
No, that's key. They found traces consistent with her prescribed medications, the Wellbutrin, Lamictal, etc., plus some common over-the-counter things like Sinutab and ibuprofen. There was a tiny amount of alcohol, about 0.02%, which is negligible, basically nothing. Critically, no ecstasy, no cocaine, no GHB, none of the illicit drugs theorized from the video.
So the drug theory was out. What about the levels of her prescribed meds?
They were low. The interpretation, supported by the fact that many pills were found still in her prescription bottles in her belongings, was that she was significantly under-medicating, or had perhaps stopped taking them altogether in the days leading up to her death.
Which fits perfectly with the bipolar I diagnosis and the risk of a psychotic episode upon stopping medication.
Precisely. Medically and forensically, the evidence points towards accidental drowning occurring during a psychotic episode likely triggered by medication noncompliance.
Okay, that seems scientifically sound. But then we hit the biggest question mark of all. How on earth did she get into that water tank? The logistics seem impossible.
This is where the official narrative really runs into trouble for a lot of people. Let's start with roof access. The hotel maintained the doors leading to the roof stairs, and the roof itself were locked. Supposedly needed staff keys or passcodes. They also claimed any attempt to force those doors should have set off an alarm.
But did an alarm go off?
There's no record of one going off around the time she disappeared.
Hmm.
And then there's the police dog issue again. Remember, the dogs searched that roof days after she vanished and didn't detect her scent. If she went up there on the 31st and died soon after, why didn't the dogs find any trace? It's a major inconsistency.
And the tanks themselves, they weren't easy to get into, right?
Not at all. These things are huge, like 4 feet wide, 8 feet tall cylinders. And they're propped up on concrete blocks, so the top opening is significantly higher off the roof deck. Maintenance workers needed a ladder just to look inside them. The lids were described as heavy, cumbersome metal. Getting one open, especially if you're, not tall or strong or potentially disoriented, seems incredibly difficult.
And closing it from the inside would be impossible, surely.
Seems like it. But remember, the maintenance worker who found her said the lid on her tank was open, so that solves the how did she close it problem, but it doesn't make getting up there, climbing the tank, and lifting a lid any easier.
Unless access wasn't as secure as the hotel claimed.
Exactly. There's counter evidence. Remember, her scent trail was lost near a window that connected to the fire escape. That fire escape could potentially provide a way up to the roof that bypasses the locked doors inside.
Okay, that's plausible.
And then, even more significantly, after her death, someone posted a video online apparently showing how easy it was to get onto the Cecil roof via that fire escape. And that same video seemed to show that at least 2 of the water tank lids were already open or maybe just not properly secured. If that's true, it completely changes the picture. It suggests gross negligence by the hotel, making access much easier than they let on.
So physical impossibility might not have been so impossible if the hotel's security was lax.
Precisely. Which brings us back to the official explanation, the psychosis theory trying to bridge that gap. The lead LAPD detective, Wallace Tennell, basically concluded she had a psychotic episode due to stopping her meds, somehow found her way to the roof, and got into the tank.
And mental health experts support that possibility.
Yeah.
That someone in that state could do something so physically demanding.
Yes. They emphasize that during severe bipolar I mania or psychosis, the paranoia can be overwhelming. The drive to escape a perceived threat, even a delusional one, can make people ignore pain, ignore danger, ignore normal physical limits. There are documented cases of people in psychotic states doing seemingly impossible things, like climbing sheer surfaces or fire escapes, driven by that intense fear.
So climbing the tank, opening the lid, it wasn't rational. It was a desperate act of hiding from a delusion.
That's the argument. Even the fact she was found naked, which seems odd, could fit. People in severe mental crises sometimes remove clothing maybe due to the delusion itself, or sometimes due to hyperthermia, overheating caused by the extreme manic state.
But the public, a lot of people just don't buy it, do they? The murder theory persists.
It really does. For many skeptics, the logistics still don't add up. They argue, why choose that way to commit suicide if that was the intent? It's incredibly complex and difficult. Jumping off the roof would have been far simpler. Plus, that elevator video. It still looks to many like she's fleeing someone real. Add the lack of fingerprinting on the tank lid, the dog search failure, the questions about the door reopening. It feeds the suspicion of a cover-up. That maybe it was a homicide and it was just easier to rule it an accident.
So it's this clash. A plausible medical explanation versus these really nagging logistical questions and the hotel's own dark history.
And that negligence aspect led to lawsuits, didn't it?
It did. Almost immediately, some hotel guests sued the stay on Main over the contaminated water they'd been using. Can't blame them. And Elisa's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the hotel in September 2013. They argued the hotel failed in its basic duty to keep the premises safe, specifically regarding access to those water tanks. They claimed the hazard was foreseeable.
But the hotel fought back.
Yeah, the hotel argued they couldn't have reasonably foreseen that a guest would somehow manage to get onto the roof, climb into a water tank, and drown. They basically said her actions were so unpredictable they couldn't be held liable.
And the court agreed, ultimately. The lawsuit was dismissed in 2015.
Which, again, probably just fueled more suspicion for those who believed the hotel was negligent and maybe covering up how easy access really was.
Definitely. And beyond the legal battles, this case just exploded online. It became this touchstone for internet sleuths. Sometimes leading to good insights, but often, falling into that tunnel vision trap, focusing on weird coincidences and ignoring the more likely medical explanations.
And there was one coincidence that really fanned the flames, wasn't there? The Dark Water movie.
Oh yeah, that was uncanny. The 2005 horror film Dark Water has plot points incredibly similar. A creepy, dysfunctional elevator in an old building, complaints about dark, foul-tasting water coming from the taps. And the mystery is eventually solved when the body of a missing girl is found in the building's rooftop water tank. The parallels were just too striking for many people to ignore. It felt ripped from a horror script.
It really fed into the whole cursed hotel narrative, and the case has seeped into popular culture ever since.
Absolutely. TV shows referenced it almost immediately. Castle had an episode with a body in a water tank at the Cedric Hotel. How to Get Away with Murder's first season had a similar storyline. And American Horror Story. Hotel. Ryan Murphy explicitly said the premise was inspired by seeing that elevator footage of Elisa Lam. It captured the public imagination in a really visceral way.
Films, music too.
Yep. There was talk of a horror film script called The Bringing, though it faced criticism. Bands like the Zolas wrote a song trying to imagine her last day more sympathetically, while others like SKYND focused on the unsettling mystery of the video. And of course, the big Netflix documentary series in 2021, Crime Scene, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel.
But even with all that attention, the skepticism hasn't gone away.
Not at all. You still have people arguing it was faked. Mark Kozelek, the musician from Sun Kill Moon, claimed in 2017 he thought the whole thing was a hoax, pointing to the pixelated face in the video as proof it wasn't even her. It shows how resistant some people are to the official findings.
So summing this all up, it's this incredibly complex mix. You have Elisa, clearly struggling with severe mental illness. You had that deeply disturbing video. You have the Cecil Hotel with its own baggage. And then you have the physical evidence, the autopsy, pointing to accident. But the logistics of getting into that tank remaining problematic at best.
Right. The official conclusion, accidental drowning caused by a psychotic episode linked to her stopping her bipolar medication. It makes the most sense based on the medical and forensic evidence we have. No trauma, no illicit drugs, a history that fits. But you absolutely cannot dismiss the likelihood of serious negligence by the hotel regarding roof and tank access. And you have to acknowledge why the public finds it so hard to accept this explanation, especially when the setting in the video feels so much like the setup for a crime thriller.
It really leaves you with this unsettling final thought, doesn't it? It makes you question, when does a documented mental health crisis become the definitive explanation for bizarre, tragic behavior?
Mm-hmm.
And when does it risk becoming a convenient way to close the book on a case where the physical logistics, the security failures just don't quite seem to add up, or questions linger about how it was even possible?
That's the tension at the heart of it. The line between a deeply sad personal tragedy fueled by illness and a mystery that feels like it's still missing crucial pieces. It remains suspended between those two possibilities.
Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.